Well, you have finally got here. You are listening to the Erskine Music Podcast. Here, by popular demand, we discuss life, culture, Christ, and of course, music. These half-hour broadcasts are perfect for a commute, coffee time, chat, or any other gap in your schedule where you want to put great content. So without further ado, let's join the conversation today, already in progress.
Dr. Jason Plummer.
Hey, what's up, my man?
How are you, sir?
Doing very well. Very well. I represent.
Hey, you gotta give me some merch.
I do.
So I can represent.
Yeah, in my own sweatshop.
Yes, that's right. You got your
Public
kids
work.
working in the sweatshop.
That's it.
Child labor stuff.
That's it.
Well, welcome to the show. It's great to see you on the other side of the screen there as a guest for the Erskine Music Show. Normally, we'll do the weekend show together, The Way Forward.
Yeah.
But this is a different and exciting series I think that we've done. This is maybe 2 or 3 times we've talked about Litchfield Christian School, and the updates have been phenomenal. Every time that we get on here, there's, the idea of it, and then there's how the Lord is moving in the midst of that. And so our people just need an update about where you're at, because school starts tomorrow, as I understand.
The meet your teachers tomorrow. First day of class is Thursday. Yep. So it's about to be in session.
It is nigh upon us.
Yep.
It is nigh upon us. And so I wanted you to just kind of update everybody a little bit on, the schedule is you're starting. You've got this crazy commencement speaker that's coming to start things off.
Yeah.
But I want people to know the story of how this all comes to be, because I've heard several people recently even tell me that they have a desire to start a Christian school. And so that didn't just happen overnight.
That's a great desire. I think for us, that process has been over several years as we've, especially COVID-19, that was a big opportunity for us to begin to engage in the public school a little bit by providing a mentoring, tutoring program after school. Actually, when in our community, the school went to a hybrid learning schedule where kids were off of school for a couple of days and then were on school for a couple of days, and they required internet services at the house and support at the home. And, in our community, we just had some students that didn't have that support. So the church opened up the opportunity to do that. And from there, God began to grow this vision of what would it look like to use education as a means of grace on a more macro level, like a school level, not just an after school program thing, but how can we disciple these children and their families all day, every day for the whole school year? And so from COVID, this mass global pandemic, for us, God planted this tree for Litchfield Christian School and began to cast this really big vision for us. I was able to get my doctorate of educational ministry during that time. I was able to get trained better about what does education look like and how to implement it, especially my community. Give me time to exegete my community. What are our needs here? What is kind of figure out the real why we want to start a school. That's
now,
a big deal, by the way.
Before you get to the why part of things, I don't want people to miss what Dr. Plummer just said. Dr. Plummer, Bishop Jason Apostle Plummer.
There is a way to say it, I guess. I didn't know this, but the mortician across the street figured it out. I guess I'm supposed to be called Reverend Dr. Plummer.
Yes, because you put the highest last.
No, you put the first.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's chronological.
Yes, it's chronological. Reverend Doctor. The
Reverend Doctor. It would be Bishop Reverend.
Bishop. That's right.
But I don't want people to skip over that. This man has trained. He spent years, doctoral study. I know we talked several times I think this man thought that he was about to lose his mind working on that doctorate, and the Lord brought him through a process there, and
Yeah.
it was a grinding process. I want people
Yeah.
to realize that when the Lord calls you to a work, He calls you and He equips you in that work, but there is a pruning, a siphoning, a
Yeah.
pressing that
You
takes
know,
place in the midst of a refining process there.
I'm glad you said it that way, because Craig Keener, the New Testament theologian,
Mm-hmm.
he said, when God calls you to a work, don't be surprised when the suffering is likened to the work, or
Oh,
commensurate to the work, meaning that the higher the call, the greater the suffering, the greater the training. The deeper the call, the deeper the refining.
uh,
That I found out that's true. Like, that's true.
yes,
If God is going to call you to a great work, He is going to refine you to a deeper level so that you can be sustained for that work.
yes,
And
yes.
I'm not saying that you need to go get a doctorate. You don't need a doctorate to start a school. That was just a pathway that I was able to take, because I have a great church. I have a great leadership team. I have a great family. I have support. That was my vision. Plenty of people have started schools without doctorates. However, I will tell you that I am so thankful that God brought me down that road. My professors and my advisor, Dr. Haste, taught me a tremendous amount of what it means to actually do education well, and and so. But I'll tell you that the calling, the higher the calling, the deeper the training. And
That's a good way to say
yes,
that. That's
yes,
and
yeah,
every preacher that's watching this, every minister, every believer who's been called and recognizes that call upon their lives is saying amen at this point,
yeah.
because that
You
is
can't be
a
soft serve. You
yeah,
can't be
yeah,
soft serve.
yeah. It's funny because I'm in a place where there's a lot of people who want to, be used greatly of God. I want to, stand on
Uh,
stage. I want to do all these different
yeah,
things, and I'm like,
yeah.
do you now?
Do you?
Do do you now? Tell me about how
You
deep
sure
that
about
call
that?
is.
You sure about that?
Yeah, tell me about how deep and how worldwide and
Uh,
how profound
no.
that thing
Yeah,
is that you have been called to.
yeah. It's I liken it to, and I said this before. I probably said it on the show before, but when we were going through the process I mean, this was like you said, there are times I thought I was going to probably die or something going through my doctoral work, because
I
the
mean, I wasn't
church,
going to use that language, but that's kind of what it seemed like.
because the church also had to come along with it. So I'm pastoring, schooling, and then looking at starting a school at the same time. That's all part of the fire, and the church also had to come along, because I can't do this without the church body. And I would recommend, if you're going to start a school, don't start it without the church. Church is a
Okay.
lifeline. The church is, I mean, is solid. God's fellowship, God's people, resources, everything. I don't like the idea of starting a Christian school apart from the church. I would suggest that you make it a ministry of the church. But the church had to come along, right? And so we had to walk through some things. We had to experience some difficult things, and as you're going through it, and you're trying to refine it, God is on the one hand giving you this vision for reaching your community through education. At the same time, He's telling you the road to get there is going to be very difficult. The vision's cool. So what happens is the way you feel. So that's kind of how I'm operating. I see the vision. I see this really cool glory that I think the church is just going to marvel over, and the community is going to marvel over, because God is going to be He's going to show you a part of Himself that you've never seen before. And you're going to see Him provide like you've never seen before. You're going to see like George Mueller type things, right?
Mm,
That's the vision we're casting.
yes.
And to get there, though, you have to go through the road, like the cross. You have to go through it to get to the other side. So the way I liken it is, it's one of those things where I pull up to the Grand Canyon, and I'm safely behind the fence, and I'm looking at the Grand Canyon, and it's wonderful. It's a beautiful place to be, and I just, wow, God, you're amazing. And He says to you, well, you haven't quite seen amazing yet. Go ahead and step over that fence. And so you're like, I don't know about that. Well, just go ahead and step over. And so I step over the fence, but I'm holding on to the fence. He says, no, you haven't seen it yet. No, you haven't seen it yet. I want to show you something. And so what he starts to do is he starts to push you. You're fighting backwards because you're like, I don't want to go that ledge. I don't want to go that ledge. But he starts pushing you. Yeah. He starts pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. So now you're not even barely on the ledge and you're looking down and you see death and you're like, that's insane. And then he says, look up and you see this beautiful, powerful, majestic, vast canyon that is just, on the one hand, terrifying, and the other hand, awe-inspiring. And that's what he's doing. He's pushing right there because now you see, right? Now you see. And that's what it feels like every day because we don't know what we're doing. We don't. And listen, when I'm talking about bringing people into the fold, we're not bringing we're not a refuge for Christian families. We're trying to draw very broken, hurt families to the church. So when we exegeted our community, we found that poverty grips our community in a bad way.
A couple things that you said there, and I wanted to kind of piggyback on this. One, a big shout out to First Baptist Church Litchfield and the folks that are there in reference to supporting the vision that you've discussed here and how vital that has been. The community, spiritual community, embrace that. And so I want to give a shout out to all the folks, many names that could be called out here, but I see their faces and know their hearts and know their love for the Lord and know their embrace of this vision. And so that's been dynamic as well. But then also wanted to talk about how this project, this vision that God has given you is one that leads you to a place where you're about to talk about it. This is not your traditional, let's just make a haven for the good kids so the good kids will not have to worry about being around the bad kids kind of scenario.
Yes, that is exactly correct. And this is going to rub people the wrong way. Like,
go ahead and rub it.
I think
Well, that certainly gives a sense of why people enjoy this show. Very engaging, very heartfelt. We will return to the conversation in a few moments, but first, let's thank our sponsors and you for all your awesome support. Moody Radio's Dawn and Steve Morning Show, Life Action Ministries, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and Holt International. Thanks so much to our partners who make such a difference.
Thanks, Jason. This is Dawn.
And this is Steve of Dawn and Steve in the Morning on Moody Radio. You can find us online at donandsteve.org, or you can listen through the Moody Radio app.
And as friends of the Erskine Music Show, we always enjoy the variety of topics our friend has on his show.
So, on behalf of our show, thanks, Erskine, for bringing great Christ-centered topics to the people.
All right, let's get back to the show. This is where it gets good.
Particularly in the church. When we set out to do this, this was about when we exegeted our community, we found poverty influences our community at a high rate. Meth addiction is a real problem for our community. Broken families, everything from divorce to cohabitation to the prison, all kinds of crazy things are breaking families apart. Mm-hmm. There's impaired learning. 22% of our kiddos have an IEP. And then there's the unchurched. There are literally families growing up in our community have never heard of Jesus, which is crazy because this was once a very vibrant church community. But I would say over the last 30, 40 years, it has just become more unchurched, right? Or it was what Tim Rhodes would call dechurched.
Okay.
And so you have these 5 areas that we found were the darkest parts of our community. So when we began to use education as a means of grace, what we're trying to say is we're going to address poverty, substance abuse, broken families, impaired learning, and unchurched through the means of education. So that's what the school, that's our why, right? Uh-huh. Well, that means that we're going to invite these folks into our house with all of their complexities and their brokenness and their messiness. And we expect that they're not going to pay us back, right? Because that's the attitude you take. And we expect that they're going to break the fine china at times, right?
Okay.
It's going to be costly. And you're going to have families and kids there who are not Orthodox. This is brand spanking new. And our goal is to see new Christians, the Great Commission mindedness. And so what happens is Christian families are excited that there's a Christian school, but they're not excited that you're inviting lost people there.
Come on now.
They don't want their kids around it. I actually have heard people say, I take my kids out of the public school to put them here. I don't want them around those kids. And I'm like, well, this is our why. This is what we're about.
Yeah.
We're going after kids who have autism. We're going after kids who have cognitive issues. We're going after kids who, fetal alcohol syndrome. Maybe were addicted to meth when they were born. We're going after families who have no way of supporting a private education at all. We're going after families who have got dads in prison or homeless or moms on the streets living with grandma or guardian. We're going after a lot of dynamics that are not in your typical Christian home or typical Christian church.
Yeah.
And so this is for us the vision that God has called us to. If you want to see real transformation, from people coming out of the darkness into the light, you got to go to the darkness to bring the light. And that's how you're going to see the contrast.
Yeah.
And so that has been an interesting move. I don't hate the public school, even though I disagree with a lot of its philosophy and culture. Okay.
Yeah. Let's get to that, kind of segment that off, because I think people need to rest in just a few moments of us having that discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a Christian school discussion.
Yeah.
It is you and I both heard this when we were in student ministry together. You and I have heard this in the context of church life, is that we want people to come to church. We just doggone it want the right kind of people to come to church. We don't want the ne'er-do-wells. We don't want the poor. We don't want and then church can become this, and I'm not saying this in any specific fashion about the church where you're at, but these are the discussions that ministers have.
Yeah.
If you didn't know,
Yeah.
behind the scenes,
Yeah.
these are the things that people talk about.
Yeah.
Because people complain that there's those kind of people are now coming to our church. Those kind of people are now coming to the youth group. Those kind of people, Jason, are wanting to be in this school, and I didn't bring my kids out of the public school to be a part of this nonsense again. And so you've had to hear some of those things before, and I just wanted people to rest in this discussion of, is that in your heart as well? Are you perpetually in the process of escapism to the point where you want to get away from all bad things in this world so that you can create an island of you and your righteous friends so that you don't have to worry about anything that's going around? I would just go ahead and say that is not the Great Commission. It is not Bible. You need to repent. But you'll say something kinder.
We call it soft serve. That's been a phrase around watching so much of the Christian culture be soft serve Christians. They just cannot handle. It's almost like they've adopted this cancel culture mentality on a kind of a Christian context, or I don't know. It's soft serve, and I don't mean to be so derogatory, but I can't stand it, because we can't get anything done when we're always running away from the very thing God's called us to reach for.
Come on. Amen.
You know what I'm saying?
Amen.
And what we're doing is
Thanks, Brian.
We are trusting that God is going to draw the people here He wants. We're trusting that the gospel is going to have the same transformational power on them as it did on me. I was lost as a goose.
Mm-hmm.
I was dead in my sin. I had my own God in mind until He broke through and invaded my heart and drew me to Himself. And thankfully, I had people who were willing enough to tell me the gospel. They reached out from the light to the dark. And that's what we want to do here, is we want to reach out. And we know it's going to be hard and difficult. We have these conversations every day that ministry is often filled with tears. But we actually believe.
That's a quote right there.
We actually
ministry
believe.
is often filled with tears.
Absolutely. But we absolutely believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we believe
Amen.
in the new creation and the new heavens and new earth. And He's going to come back and restore all things. We believe that the Great Commission has been given to us as a gift to go and see the work of God and the glory of God. And I think that many churches today in America and the West are not vibrant and full of life because they don't get to see the glory of God in the way He's wanting to show them. Which means you've got to get out on the edge of that Grand Canyon and be terrified and awe at the same time, because that's how you see it. That's why you need to read about George Mueller and Adoniram Judson and Hudson Taylor and these guys. That's what they believed. That's what they did. Yeah, I mean, George Mueller's had a massive influence on me with this school. I mean, that's who I'm looking at. When he robbed the streets of Bristol of the orphans, I'm calling for us to grab the least of these. I want to be a school for the least of these, the ones that nobody wants. Send them to us. Send them to us, and we will. Hallelujah! So, and we've got those kids, by the way. God answered that prayer. Yeah, He did.
Well, I want to drill down to some specifics in terms of what. One, I want people to hear your heart with regards to this is not. We hate the public school, and so therefore they're an enemy of ours. I mean, you're in Illinois. Let's just be honest. You're in Illinois, and it is 100% 24/7 full-time craziness in the state of Illinois. However, you didn't look at those things and say, you know what? We're an enemy of the public school. In fact, there's a different posture and attitude that you have altogether, and people need to hear that. And so let's share that for just a few moments, your heart and some of those associations that, can sometimes lead in particular directions.
So here's where I made a mistake. And I got the vision from the Lord, and I love the vision. I love the school, the least of these. It wasn't even about, inside of the vision that God gave me, it wasn't even about how bad the public school is. The vision that I was given is about how awesome God can do this great work among these people.
Right.
So I wasn't even worried about that. But I wound up aligning myself and partnering with people who had a real vendetta against the public school. And that was a mistake because that wasn't our why. Now, that's the why for a lot of people around my neck of the woods, but that's not our why. I don't hate the public school. I have a real heart for those teachers. Mm-hmm. I was in the public school. I taught there. I know that their hands are tied. I know that policies and regulations are coming down the pipe that they have no control over, and that many of them have to go home at night and be a little frustrated about what they're teaching because their convictions or values say one thing, but the state's requiring something else. I also know that they're afraid of losing their retirement. All these years they've invested, and this is their livelihood. And by the way, in the state of Illinois, they're making a decent livelihood. Somebody just released the salaries of Litchfield public school teachers, and I'm telling you, they're doing okay.
They're doing just fine, huh?
They're doing okay. They're making 3 times as much as what our teachers are making. Those tax dollars are getting used. I mean, I think the ag teacher makes like $80,000 a year. That's not bad for being a teacher. Okay. So just to put things in perspective, I don't dislike it. Now I do disagree with the philosophy of education there. I do disagree with the culture that's at the school.
And that needs to be said as well.
Yes, I disagree with the policies that are coming down from the state that are wreaking havoc in our schools. But just because I disagree with them doesn't mean I have this vendetta against them. Mm-hmm. What I think is going to happen is I think our school is going to be a very, very much a compliment to the work that's happening here. And the community is going to see that, wow, we're doing a really good thing here. And we're bringing the light of the gospel, which is going to bear fruit in the lives of these children on their character, for starters, and their confidence in what they're doing, being able to read and write and do math. And I think we're going to be a blessing. We're not going to be at war with the public school. My heart is not to try to combat them or belittle them or demean them. My goal is to focus all of my energy on watching God transform these children, these families inside of Litchfield Christian School.
Well, you probably already know that when you hear that sound, there's music on the way. After all, this is kind of a music show. Sit back and enjoy. All the music can be easily found on your favorite digital distribution channels. turn up the volume, and here we go.
Look up, people. It's time to sing out loud. We're not ashamed. We're lifting up his name. Come on, people. We're gonna sing out loud. We're not ashamed. We're lifting up his name. Moving forward, pressing onward, bolder, stronger. Jesus, only Savior. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. Nothing but love is how we do this. Yeah, Jesus reigns. Let all the people shout. We wanna praise. It's what we're all about. Like David danced, jumping all around. Our God reigns. Worship and bow down. Yeah, we're moving forward, pressing onward, bolder, stronger. Jesus, only Savior. Just dance, everybody. Come on. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. Nothing but love is how we do this. They wanna know what we're not afraid. They wanna know where our hope is found. They wanna know what we're dancing around. Jesus. They wanna know what we're not afraid. They wanna know where our hope is found. They wanna know what we're dancing around. Jesus. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. Nothing but love is how we do this. Just dance, everybody. Feel the music. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. This is how we do. Nothing but love is how we do this. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. Nothing but love is how we do this.
We're back with Dr. Jason Plummer, and we're going to dive deep into the idea behind and the rationale behind and the actual education plan so far as they can share that with us. But if you're not already liked, shared, subscribed to the show, shame on you. All right. Now that you've repented of that and done better. All right, Dr. Plummer. There's some things that you don't know. But what do you know?
Well, the school operates from a mission, right, to give children, to empower children with a Christian education so they can flourish. That's the nuts and bolts. And the three spheres of life is the church, community, and home. That's how we organize life: church, community, and home.
Take notes.
So we want to empower children with a Christian education so they can flourish as husbands and wives, church leaders, elders, deacons, servants of the Lord, and vocationally, bankers, lawyers, accountants, electricians, plumbers, whatever in the world God calls you to. We want you to flourish. And we believe that a solid Christian education can do that for you. It can be that's why it's an instrument of grace, right? We're going to help you disciple you and develop you in those areas. And so for us to do that, this is where the public school and I would disagree. The public school would adopt some more progressive-minded educational philosophy where we adopt more of a perennial classical type we're not a classical school. We can't say that we are completely that, but we definitely uphold to a more perennial approach. And all that is just it's a Western education um, that's virtue and wisdom driven. It's wholesome. It's very beautiful in the sense that it focuses a lot on literature, like writing and reading.
Yeah, I was going to say, unpack that sort of virtue-driven educational model.
Yeah, it's aligning the Christian values and character up with the content that you're learning, the rich content that you're learning. So everything is done from a Christian worldview, so what we're not doing is wrapping Christianity around curriculum and saying, okay, this is a Christian education, which I fear is a lot of Christian schools. Is Christianity is kind of a veneer of it for education, where everything inside of our educational commitment is from the ground up. It's from the roots. Christian education, it focuses on the development of wisdom and virtue through topics like math, reading, writing, language, Latin, science, history, and all those things. And so you get the teachings of the Lord through the ground up, so to speak, right? And we're not just going to tap Jesus onto something. It's going to flow from it. So we do a lot of even somewhat biblical counseling ideas inside of our culture, where we're trying to address the child's heart. So even within reconciliation, when children, obviously, when they get together, don't always get along. Everything from what they're studying in school as far as content goes to how they handle their relationships is all driven from a biblical concept. For instance, like I just talked about reconciliation.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I have something I want to say about that as well.
Yeah, when children are disrupting the process or having a difficult time with each other, the teacher, we have an acronym of GRACE that helps us make sure we get to the heart of the issue, right? Get to the heart. We're not just putting Band-Aids on behavior.
Take notes, folks.
Right? We're not just putting things aside. We want to get to the heart of what's going on. We need to recognize the difference between rebellion and foolishness. There's a lot of foolishness wrapped up in the heart of a child. So you're going to see a lot of foolishness. And if it's foolishness, you handle it one way. If it's rebellion, it's a different way. And you need to recognize the difference so that we're not exasperating children and we're not, putting them in a bad place to be unsuccessful. You need to ask heart-driven questions. You need to ask.
That's the A. That's the A there.
That's the A. You got to ask. You got to get to the motive. Why are you doing what you're doing, and what are you hoping to get out of it?
What am I, chopped liver here? I can produce this.
And you need to communicate the gospel clearly. This is where we got to get the children to. This is why Jesus died on the cross. This is why we need to depend on him. We need to come to him. This is what his blood atones. And then you need to expect repentance and resolution. Reconciliation. You need to expect reconciliation. If somebody's been wronged, the person who wronged them needs to ask for forgiveness. And the person who's been wronged needs to express forgiveness. And we need to get to the resolution, and that needs to happen. And so that's part of the culture. That's just one aspect of our culture that we're tying in these biblical principles into teaching our children about what it means to flourish. And though that principle, the grace principle, is applicable to church, community, and home, because they all involve relationships. It's teaching the child humility. It's teaching the child to listen, to be aware, emotionally aware, and to be emotionally mature.
What was the A again?
Ask heart-directed questions. Yep. So get to the heart, right? Recognize the difference between rebellion and foolishness. Ask heart-directed questions. You got to get to the motive. And then here's the thing, right? When you're dealing with the younger children, they're going to tell you oftentimes, I don't know why I did that. And that's probably true. They're impulsive. They may not know what they did. Well, now as the parent, you have to now give the category. You're going to develop the category for them. Well, this is wrong. Slapping that kid upside the head with a pencil is wrong. And this is why it's wrong. And this is why you hurt them. And this is how you hurt them. And you're developing those categories. One of the craziest things I've seen, Erskine, and I'm seeing it, I don't know, maybe you're seeing it too, is the parent deferring to the child to make these decisions without giving them the categories to make these decisions. It comes in line with like gentle parenting. Have you heard that whole thing?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. It's not only gentle parenting, but it's gentle living. By the way,
Yeah,
that people do this sort of thing all the time. It's a constant, perpetual annoyance to me because the deferential culture of we're going to
yeah.
just defer, defer, defer,
The
defer,
defer,
defer.
defer, defer. That's right.
And
And
I'm
now the
not a man
kids,
who is given to just deferring all the time. Like I
the
want to be
kid,
kind and gentle, but it is not my responsibility as a leader to just constantly defer.
right. And the kid doesn't have the capacity to do these things on his own. That's why he's a child. And we have to develop that inside of them. So that even part of our reconciliation process, the culture of our school is teaching the children categories. The first one is you're a humble receiver. That's part of our philosophy. The teacher is the wise sage who guides and is the authoritative figure in the classroom, and the student is the humble receiver. And we're teaching them to be humble receivers, which means that we're going to help them develop categories for thinking, categories for feeling, because they don't have them yet. They're not born with them. That's the whole purpose of train up a child in the way they should go, so when they get old, they don't depart. You have to train it. And so our school is committed to helping our children to those issues, especially when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, and I was going to say a note about that, and I don't want it to come across as though it's harsh or anything. Like you never let kids have this discovery process or engage in any type of leadership or engage in any type of development as far as it's concerned. But you've got to lead people to a place where they can be led and they have a launch pad to be able to
That's right.
understand some things. You can't just, throw the thing out and just be like, hey, so who wants to do anything today? Okay,
Yeah.
what do you want to do? What do you want to do? No, we gotta frame this in a particular way that will help you to flourish. And there's a lot of discussion, thankfully, I think even in the Metro Nashville Public Schools about this idea of restorative justice. I love the fact that they're having those types of discussions, and even so far as they can begin to trace out some biblical principles that are found in restorative justice. But here's one of the things that your school does that the public school in Nashville or public school anywhere else is not able to do. Who are we being restored to?
Yeah.
Because there's this reconciliation that must take place between the two parties that are there. But then there's a reconciliation within the context of the community. But then
Yeah.
beyond that, there's reconciliation to God, because that
That's right.
offense has most certainly happened, not just in that community, but higher than that,
Yeah.
which would condemn all of us and make it necessary for all of us to need the mediation of Christ. And the fact that you guys are willing to fine tune that type of discussion, I think is helpful for people, because how do you flourish when there's in a broken world, broken relationships, broken communities, and how can they ever be reconciled without the mediatorial work of Christ?
And two things to that is one, we're grabbing a lot of children whose homes don't function like this. It's all for one. It's survival of the fittest. It's whatever. And so we're having to teach them. No. There's a way that God says you can flourish in relationships if you follow these principles and virtues. The second idea, though, is Randy Stinson was so helpful to me in seminary because he described learning like a cone. And I think this is applicable to when you're working with children in education or in the home, is when they're younger, right? When they're younger, they're at the tip of the cone and it's small, like down here. And what that means is their rope is very tight. I'm deciding pretty much everything for them when they're little, what they wear, what they eat, when they go to bed, how they're going to approach me, how they're going to talk to me, how they're going to talk to others. I'm making all of those decisions, and it's very, very tight. And then as they grow, that rope opens up a little bit like a cone, right? It starts to kind of, as they mature, they come out. By the time they get into high school, hopefully they've got a lot more freedom because you've taught them how to be wise. You've taught them how to think. You've taught them how to make these decisions. Like you said, there has to be a place where the lead, they're learning how to lead by what we're doing. What I think has happened is that America, the church, Western, whatever civilization, has turned that cone upside down, and they give these kids all this freedom when they're young, and then they try to tighten it up when they get older, and all of a sudden you've got teenage rebellion, right? Where the cone needs to be turned right side up or upside down so that the cone is narrow at the bottom. and you start teaching the categories, you start teaching the truths, you start establishing what wisdom is and what foolishness is and how to live rightly before God and before neighbor. And as you teach them that, then they're given the opportunity to lead because they now actually have the capacity to do so. That's what we hope to do at the school is by the time they get to high school, we actually celebrate this and you're going to see this when you come on September 4th, is the pinning ceremony is all about saying to these kids, we expect more from you because we're going to develop you from a young age to be able to take on this leadership in high school, to be mature and ready to engage the world. That does not fit well with gentle parenting or deferring.
We have come to the end of this episode. Don't miss a final word from Erskine.
Hey guys, tell your friends about this show. And as always, I look forward to your interactions. Please contact us as you are able. We love to hear from you. Okay, friends, let's go and make a difference.